This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. I'm Danielle Le-Tran, and this is my father, Chow Le-Tran. He was born June 10th, 1971, and he was a part of the Vietnam War. And this interview is being conducted on May 22nd, 2023 in Caledonia, Michigan. Okay, can you tell me where you were born?
I was born in Quy Nhon, Vietnam. It's in between South and Central Vietnam.
And then tell me a little bit about your family.
Well, I was adopted, so I really don't have real family history, but I was in an orphanage when I was an infant, and was there until I was 4, and then I was raised by a Vietnamese family in the United States.
Okay. And you have any siblings?
I have one adopted sister, and I have 2 cousins and 3 cousins that I consider as sisters and brothers also, but it was just my sister and I. We were the only ones growing up together, but we had different parents.
Okay. What about
Birth parents, yeah.
What about your parents?
My birth parents?
Your adopted parents?
My adopted parents, adopted by when I lived I was adopted in Colorado by a social worker that lived in Vietnam and worked in orphanages. And she got me out of Vietnam and raised me, and then she got married to a Vietnamese gentleman, and then he adopted me and had my name changed to his last name, Le-Tran. When I left Vietnam, my last name was Le-Tran, T-H-A-N-H.
Interesting. And so you were born in Vietnam during
the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And I left in 1975. I was there for 4 years before I left Vietnam.
You were in an orphanage?
I was in an orphanage, sorry, yes.
So how was your experience getting out of Vietnam?
Well, surprisingly, I didn't really remember anything of when I was in Vietnam. I don't remember no childhood memories or anything when I was an infant, or they don't have any pictures, any infant pictures. I have only pictures from when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old and older, but all my records, birth papers, everything was lost in the war. I was left at a Catholic church footstep when I was only a few days old. So my official birthday is not even really my true birthday. That was the date that was given.
Have you learned anything about, or since you don't really know anything, how old were you when you were?
4 and a half.
Okay. Have you learned anything from maybe other people who are older and worked with you, or had other experiences around the same time in the war?
Yeah, I don't have any personal experience that I remember, but I did meet some adoptees when there was a 25-year reunion in Colorado. I met some adoptees who share some of their experiences in Vietnam. I do have friends there and cousins that still live in Vietnam. But most of the history I've learned, from in school, and a lot of it from my adopted mother, who was in the middle of the whole battlefield and the whole all the orphanages, and she played a really big part in the Vietnam War.
What did she do exactly?
She was the director of the orphanages. She helped place children in different orphanages, help them place them in different families, She helped kick off the Operation Baby Lift and helped with the whole process of getting all the kids their paperwork, getting on the planes, making sure all the kids in the orphanages that were in danger, to flown out as soon as possible.
Could you tell me a little bit more about Operation Baby Lift and what that was?
It was their last step attempt to save any of the kids in the orphanages because the North Vietnamese were coming down towards the south and pretty much taking out everything in their way.
Mm-hmm.
To take over control of South Vietnam. So essentially, my flight was the first flight that was snuck out in the middle of the night in 1975, where my mom, my adopted mom, she placed me on the plane with several 100 other kids, and there was there's two American pilots, Healy, I can't remember his other name, but they disregarded the commands by the airfield not to take off, but they went ahead and took off anyways in the middle of the night. All the runway lights were turned off, and they flew us out to California. And then once word got that we made it to California, then it sparked the whole Operation Baby Lift.
Wow. So basically, those two pilots saved so many lives.
Yeah, I'm saving a lot of lives, saved my life, and then that sparked the whole. And then my mom, she wrote a letter to, I think it was President Nixon back then, just about the whole situation with the orphanages and the bad situations in the orphanages, and then they initiated the whole urgency of getting all these orphans out of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So the second flight, which is apparently the people in history thought that was the first flight, was actually the second flight. Mine was actually the first flight that a lot of people didn't know about.
Oh wow.
So the second flight was the one that crashed in the rice field, and a bunch of people died and a lot of people got injured. And I had some friends that were around that I met from that flight too that stayed back in Vietnam because of their injuries and stuff.
So how many flights total made it out of Vietnam?
I can't remember how many flights there were, but I think it was a total number of maybe 2,000 plus kids that were taken out. So I would imagine at least each flight would probably take about 200 kids, maybe sometimes 150, 200 kids maybe.
So a lot.
So yeah, quite a bit of flights out of there.
And you mentioned there was like a lot of babies and kids on one plane. How did that work? How was there so many?
They essentially had to tear all the seats out of the airplane and stack boxes in there and just pretty much put anyone anywhere, any space they can into the plane. And a lot of the kids were infants, so they got put in boxes and just kind of stacked in there like a grocery cart.
Okay. Like sardines.
Sorry. Yeah, like sardines, yeah. And they all flew to California. San Francisco was the main destination.
And what happened after you got to San Francisco?
When I got to Florida, when I got to California, it was arrangements to go to foster homes. And I was stayed at a foster home for maybe a couple weeks. And then my adopted mother flew out after that. But she got my sister out. I got on the first plane, my sister got on the third plane. So she got lucky, she was on the third plane. And the second one that crashed.
You both just missed it.
And we just both missed it in between, yeah.
So where did you go after San Francisco?
After San Francisco, I was in Wyoming for a little bit, for a few weeks. And then eventually moved to Denver, Colorado.
So, and how long were you there?
I was in Colorado until fourth grade. So maybe about 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
then moved to Florida. My mom met a gentleman that lived in Florida. So he wanted us to move to Florida, and my sister and I were really bitter about it, but we really had no choice. So we all moved to Florida, and that's where I spent most of my life in Florida.
Okay. And you mentioned a 25-year reunion in Colorado.
Right.
What was that like?
That was very exciting and scary, and turned out to be very interesting, and more exciting than I thought it would be. I didn't originally want to go to that because I was, just recently knew about being adopted and got more information about the war, but I was curious about other people that were part of that also.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an opportunity to go there and meet other adoptees that were during the Operation Bay Liver during the fall of Saigon. That's where I met your mother. The 25-year reunion. And we both were on the fence about going, but we went with our adopted mothers, and met there. And
What kinds of things did you do there? Did they like talk to you about things, or just kind of meet up with other people?
Yeah, met other adoptees. We did cooking classes. We just doing some bonding and just talking about our experiences and how being adopted or being different from your family members, how that affected how it affected your daily life, or if it did, or in a positive or negative way. So there's like a lot of group discussions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I was raised by a Vietnamese family, and a lot of other people were not. They were raised more like American families, so
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't really relate to their experiences and their struggle with not fitting in because they couldn't speak the language, or they looked different, but they couldn't speak the language either. So
Yeah.
I felt a little more fortunate.
So what was it like growing up with a Vietnamese family?
It felt normal. I honestly thought it was my real family. I didn't.
Yeah.
It felt normal. Yeah, I was learned Vietnamese culture. I learned both languages in the United States. I had to speak Vietnamese at home only, and in school I could speak English. But once I got in the doors, your grandma said English only. I mean Vietnamese only. So that's how we learned both languages.
Yeah. So how old were you when at the end of the war? Were you?
Oh, and I was 4.5 in the States. I was about 4.5.
It was right before the fall of Saigon.
Right before the fall of Saigon, yeah.
Okay. How did your experience affect your life now?
I think when I was younger, I didn't really know a lot about it. My mom didn't really. She kept it kind of on the low key. Kind of just kept it, trying to keep, I guess, our life simple by not, letting me know that I was adopted and I had different parents. She just kind of made it seem like, she was my real parent, and then she got married, and then he was my stepfather. So I didn't really put two and two together. I didn't. I don't know why my mom didn't have a father figure around.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess later on, when I was older, when I was in high school, my mom kind of she started. Then she came out and started telling me, a little bit more about Vietnam and then I was adopted and that she's not my birth parent, and I was a little confused, a little a little angry about it, but I didn't really know how to react because that's like really the only parents I knew. So
you didn't really know
I
that
didn't,
you were.
yeah, I didn't really know I was adopted. I always thought that was something. Yeah, I thought there was something different, but everybody kept on saying I looked like her, we looked like each other, so I just kind of went along with it. And
Yeah.
but when I see people that are Vietnamese, they always I always think that I'm mixed with something. I always they're always, are you full Vietnamese? Are you full Vietnamese? And I always say, yeah, I'm a special breed. I'm full Vietnamese. So it didn't really dawn on to me until I got older. Like, wait a minute, am I really full Vietnamese? So yeah, I think when I got older, then I started getting more curious about if I was 100% Vietnamese or was I really something additional to Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm.
So then eventually, 40 years later, I did a DNA test and found that I am part Irish. So it makes sense of my light skin and hairy face and square features. But that was a big thing for me, just to at least know my other half that
Yeah.
who my father could potentially be,
Mm-hmm.
whether my mother be Vietnamese or my father Vietnamese, the other way around, but more like my mother Vietnamese and my father was
Maybe a
Irish,
soldier.
European soldier,
Yeah.
or a diplomat, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And so have you gone back to Vietnam since?
I did. I went on they had a special 30-year commemorative flight of Operation Beta Lift,
Mm-hmm.
and it was restricted for the ones that were on the actual Operation Baby Lift flights, and it was for the first one that came out, and that was my flight.
Mm-hmm.
And there was my flight only really had 30 people on there,
Oh.
the most, and with the nurses and soldiers and stuff. But that was a week trip back to Vietnam. All expenses paid by World Airways. They repainted one of their planes to mimic the actual plane that looked like the plane that was flown out during that time frame. So that was really exciting. We all got to be. It was all first class service, all the way through. Everything was paid for: the flight, hotel, food, entertainment. It's probably one of the best trips ever.
What'd you get to do there?
We went to California. Got to see the plane firsthand in the tarmac and see it all shiny and new like it was back then, or maybe just like it was. And then we flew to Taiwan first. Stayed overnight in Taiwan. Got to go see that crazy cool town. And then went to Vietnam the next day and spent a day and a half there. And we kind of go do a boat trip on the river. Got to see cruise through the town. Went to a restaurant. Went to a diplomatic dinner and got awards and recognition for being part of Operation Baby Lift, and got to visit an orphanage and hang out with the kids there. That was a really touchy time to do that.
Have you held contact with anyone who's had the same experience as you, or anyone who, I don't know, was older or told you things about it?
Not really. I mean, we talked a lot. People during the flight and in Vietnam and in Colorado, but we all kind of lost contact after those trips. I know there's a lot of adoptee social media pages. They still do things, yearly, but unfortunately, with my family and schedule, I can't really attend those events like I like to.
Yeah.
I think there are some movies and plays and stuff that they made from, in regards to Operation Make Lift. The people that know that are part of it.
Is there any like significant things Mom has told you that you might like to mention about her experience, or
My mom?
no, my mom, your wife?
Oh, your mother? I don't really think she knows more about what's going on than probably in the history books. She lived in when she was younger, and she went through an adoption process, so wasn't part of the. She wasn't part of the baby lift. She was on a very preset adoption for kids that needed to be adopted from Vietnam because they didn't have any families. I think she was adopted when she was maybe 18 months.
Okay.
So she was already out of Vietnam before all that happened. I know she grew up with a American family, so she very much learned American culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she couldn't really relate to her Asian roots and any Vietnamese cultural Vietnamese culture. She did do believe that she did suffer for some PTSD. She's had the past, bad dreams and bad memories and flashbacks of things happening during that time in Vietnam. Whether it be nightmares of knives and shooting and blood, and she would have these horrible nightmares. But you can't really put any can't really pinpoint why or why or how she's still remembering these things.
That is strange how she remembers it, but she was younger and you were older.
Yeah.
You don't remember much.
Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't mind I own her or anything. Like too busy playing the French.
Have you? There isn't anyone that you've like met who's like kind of taught you a lot, or like revealed something that you maybe didn't know before?
No, I think my left mom was the only one that really shed light on the whole thing, because she's pretty much seen it all. She's been around since the French invasion. So she was forced to learn French, so she speaks French and Vietnamese and English.
Wow.
She's a family of 12 siblings. So she's a very busy woman and knows a lot about Vietnam, and she's actually written a book called Hope for the Children of Vietnam, 1975, which is available on Amazon.
Little promotion.
Promotion, right? And then she also wrote she wrote that book in English and Vietnamese. And then she's recently wrote 2 books on Vietnamese proverbs. So it's like famous, paraphrases or folklore tales that people say in the common world, common Vietnamese culture. I think she's working on another book on her romances in Vietnam.
Oh my gosh.
And her fiance. So she has a lot to offer, and if you want some really first-hand, unedited, true, experience of Vietnam and history of Vietnam and the war, you can see it in her book. She talks about it in her book.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about in your story before we finish this interview up? Any details that we missed?
I can think of, no, I guess I would like to go to travel back there and to Vietnam and spend more time. Just going where I was born and doing a little more research. Gotta find some more answers about where I was from and, you know, what I might have missed out on, and maybe find a little more history. Maybe have some siblings also in Vietnam. That'd be just, I guess, one of my goals I'd like to do. But and maybe visit more orphanages, just kind of hang out with the kids. It was fun.
Okay. Just want to go back to your roots.
Yeah.
And then finally, is there any life lessons or big takeaways you have from your whole experience and what you've learned because of this?
Yeah, it just gives me a more profound respect for, or appreciation for all the veterans and all the war heroes and all the people who served our country, and that people should be more aware of that and be more appreciative of it, and we should support, you know, all our VAs that were part of the Vietnam War, any war, and just be thankful for them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
For meeting with me.